Hiya folks, it's been quite a while since I've last done a video, and there's a few different reasons for that. I've gone through a big change in my life, and that change is still unfolding. And there's been many times when I've wanted to come and create a video. The amount of times that I've gone, oh, that's a good title for a video, that's a good topic. And it just hasn't happened, which has been good, actually. There's still been a pull there to create videos, to share insights, to share my thoughts around different things that have been unfolding for myself and different ways in which I might be able to share something that could ultimately help someone. Now, a lot of the changing I'm trying to come forwards and to make a video from a different place, because quite often in the past it has very much been I might have sat down and been called to create a video with a certain title along a certain topic, but that can often lead to me giving information that's come from the ego, it's come from the mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a structured way of giving and deliberating information, but what I wanted to do is to feel into my heart and to connect more with what wants to emerge in this space. That's why I want to share with you today something which I don't know what will come, and actually I hope that will be what all the videos will be in the future, will be deliberations from the heart, deliberations from the space of what wants to emerge in the moment. Before I sat, I just asked myself, what message of love wants to emerge? And that's where I am. I'm here in the space. So what is important about being here in the space? What is important about being here with you, being present in this moment? What's coming up for me is the feeling, actually a lot of feelings, and I wouldn't be able to feel what I need to feel if I wasn't present in the moment. I wouldn't be able to allow myself to be in the space to recognize what wants to emerge, what wants to come up, what wants to be expressed of and in love, if I wasn't somewhat here in the present. And even as I'm speaking, I'm very much aware that as much as I'm here and allowing myself to connect with my heart, there is still a level of me which is not getting caught in the mind, but is somewhat in between. And ultimately that's kind of a balancing in process of where we all kind of sit, because we all go through this space of where we ultimately throughout life is where we go from between the present moment to the past and then flick to the perceived future, and we're constantly in this flow of moving between each of these states. And ultimately when I say this, I'm expressing it knowing that our awareness is never not within the present moment, but it's what our awareness focuses on. And if our awareness is focused on the idea of what has happened in the past, or projecting into the idea of the future, then we don't allow ourselves to recognize what is here and what is present for ourselves, what is coming up. And that actually our that space that we take ourselves to, be it in the past, be it in the future, it's just a limited part of our awareness. And that limited part of us ultimately is what is holding us back from allowing us to stay present in the moment. And that could be a number of reasons why we're holding ourselves in that state of stagnancy. Often it can be because when we are in, and this is when we're talking about when we're out of harmony, when we're out of that state of convergence, of coherence. When we're in a state of incoherence, we're in a space where we're starting to connect with what is unprocessed in our bodies, what is unprocessed in our mind, what is unprocessed in our beings, essentially. And that what we're connecting with there is those stagnant parts of our being, which is often associated with our mind and our emotions. And when I'm talking about our mind in this space, I'm talking about the egoic structures that we have created as part of our identity that is often correlated with unprocessed emotions. And then when we look at those unprocessed emotions identified with certain thought patterns and certain beliefs, we can then start to see how we project ourselves into the idea of a future moment, or get called to the perception of the past, which is no longer what was present in that past moment, but is an association with what the past was. So what is important for us is to really start to connect with our heart where we can. And in our hearts is where we can become present. And it is also the key to allowing ourselves to let go of what is holding us back from being in the present. It's the key to giving ourselves over to what wants to emerge. And a big part of me wants to come through and explain the process of how you can allow yourself to let go of these thought patterns, allow yourself to really start to process these emotions. And that's kind of like where I've always been caught in. It's the idea of breaking down the process, allowing it to become mechanical so that you can see the mechanisms behind it, to allow you to break that down and break through. And what I want to say is that as much as all that is true, and what I have spoken about is the process in which we can start to really start to encompass our emotions and break three of the thought patterns that are holding us in those emotional cyclical states, and the thought states, which are also that cyclical state. They're just often encompassed together, but it's the mechanical process is true. But what I want to allow you to see is that you can't break free without stepping into that heart space, because it is that journey from the head to the heart that is ultimately what allows us to step into the space where we can feel our emotions, where we can process and feel what is here to be felt in its entirety. And that process of coming into being is stepping away from the space of doing, of projecting into the idea of what could be, and stepping into what is and what is present and what wants to be heard, be seen, be witnessed, and be loved. And that expression is the expression from the spirit into the physical. And that space in between of what wants to emerge as a unity of being, of spiritual and material. And that space of emergence between what is and what could be is the definition of manifesting. But manifesting from the inspiration of spirit coming through and manifesting through the manifest, through the material, through the physical. But what is holding us back from that unfolding magical state is the space of the mind and the I want to say the wisdom of man, because the wisdom of man is so right in the fact that it believes it knows what it is doing, rather than opening up to the wisdom of God, the wisdom of what is, the wisdom of the I am, the wisdom of spirit. It's coming back to knowing and understanding the ever-present love of what is unfolding throughout our beings. And this feels nice and this feels good to speak like this. And in many ways, this is no different to how I would normally speak in the past videos, when I allow myself to go into more of a flow. I think in many ways, I'm tired and recognize the tiredness that is present from me trying to do and make things happen, from my projections and where I think I should be and where I think I should be doing and how I think I should be quote unquote helping, when in reality everything that we need is eternally present within. And in reality, what is the space of what is real is what is unfolding in the moment. And yes, we can go into the space of the non-dual and the space of duality and the weaving of the infinite and the infinite manifest. But ultimately, that space of what is real for us within our humanity is the space of what is eternally emerging for us. And that unfolding is, as I'm seeing, is like this brewing volcano in which what is emerging and what wants to emerge is ever present from within. And ultimately the expression of what is eternally igniting within us is that process. And as our being erupts into the unfolding of what is innate within us, we then allow ourselves to go through that metabolism process. We allow ourselves to go through the expression of what wants to emerge, and ultimately to start to go through that chrysalis stage and that unfolding. And it's only through that that space of allowing ourselves to connect with what is eternally present within, and then just allowing ourselves to start to bring it into being through intended action, through inspired action, that we allow the content of the volcano to start to emerge into the manifest. And thinking of the lava and its state within, and almost that state of when it emerges into the manifest, into the air, and it starts to go into that radical change, that radical process of a kind of metamorphosis, and it starts to come into the physical. It starts to come into that state of change. As I've moved throughout my life, at different stages in my life, I've asked for teachers, and I've put myself through different spaces, and I've suffered myself through different spaces in which I've asked for teachers, and wanting this physical being, this archetype of a teacher to emerge. And for me, it's always been in the form of books, of videos, of teachers that are past and present, but I haven't had that space of a teacher, so to speak, of to connect with the physical learnings and the physical transmission. But what I would say is my first teacher, really, from I guess when we're talking in this case, I'm talking about the those that have stepped forward as the space of teachers on earth at this time. And for me, one of those first teachers was Ram Dass, and you could call him whatever you want to call him for those that know him, but that space of a teacher who is speaking and transmitting and pointing and not closing down and leaving spaces open for rumination, for you to find the way forward yourself. Well, it was quite magical when I first came across Ram Dass, and the reason I speak about him now is because for a long time, as I was connecting with him, I thought to myself, that's who I want to be. Not Ram Dass in himself, but that energy of expression, of being able to speak and to give in that way. And it's funny because it took me a long time to realize that, of course, I'm not here to be Ram Dass. In this space, I'm here to be, on one level, I'm here to be Blake. But Blake means a million different things in a million different scenarios to a million different people from a million different points of views. And on another level, I'm here to be that space of what is eternally unfolding. And on another level, I'm here to be that presence. And within that presence, it's letting go of all of that identity of Blake. And on another level, that presence is recognizing that I am here holding space within the vessel of what is present, of what is physically here and energetically here. And that space of what is eternally conscious is eternally connected with other spaces and other levels and other intelligences of conscious awareness. And I've actually have done one of my past videos, I think when I was in India, speaking to this. But there is an eternal unfolding of what can be channeled and what can be expressed and what wants to be expressed. And ultimately, when I allow myself to step into that space of open intention, of heart-filled awareness, I open the space of what is here, eternally present, to channel and connect with those altered states of consciousness, to bring forwards other messages, to bring forwards other information, to bring forwards expression of creation, of inspired creativity. And it is up to me in those certain spaces to hold, to not create the space, but to hold the space of the of that open vessel. I'm aware of how it sounds at times. Because the more we allow ourselves the space to give rise to what wants to unfold, the more we allow ourselves to recognize that our journey here on earth is not just from the limited sense of who we understand ourselves to be, but it's actually to connect on many different levels, many different layers, in many different times, to give rise to what wants to unfold eternally in the present moment. And that has no space for Blake. That has no space for Ramdas. That has no space for you, only as much as the idea of you holds space for what can arise. And that unfolding, that allowing of the emergence of consciousness gives rise to what is wanting to emerge eternally. And it is that connection to what is eternally present that allows this space of manifest consciousness to unfold, to give eternally, to love eternally, and ultimately to express higher and higher states of love and an unfolding state of manifest consciousness on the earth and beyond. And this unfolding cannot be understood intellectually. It can be felt on one level. It can be heard on one level. But it is that space of unfolding, the space of committing to something that is greater, that is ever present. That allows to give rise. And this space in which we can allow ourselves to inhabit doesn't kill who we understand ourselves to be. It doesn't stop the unfolding of our divine being, but it is actually allowing our divine being to recognize more of what wants to emerge and what wants to be present, what wants to be felt. And to recognize that who you understand yourself to be, the personality of who you understand yourself to be, is just a conjoined conglomeration of a plethora of thoughts, of ideas, of states of consciousness, of aspects of reality. And that's all it is. Because eternally ever present is that space of the I am, the space of consciousness unfolding eternally in the present moment. And it's for here that we can reach out and touch and taste and live and experience the entirety of it through our beings. And it is that space of what is eternally emerging that we can cultivate the sense of unfolding spirit, that we can build the essence of who we understand ourselves to be truly, that we can let go of our limited mindsets truly, and allow ourselves to become coherent with what is unfolding in the moment. It's not here to be understood intellectually. It's here to be felt, to be seen, truly to be the space of love, truly to be the eternal unfolding of God manifest. This is the dream that we get to live and play out and bring into the reality of what we experience. I feel a mixture of feelings, truly, because the space from where I am and the space from where I am, the space from where Blake sees himself, when I come into that space of time and allow myself to see a projection and a linear path, and when I start to imagine, what could unfold in my life, I truly limit the possibility of what can unfold. And it's taken a lot of undoing to get me where I am. And it's going to take a lot more undoing to allow. And that allowing of what wants to be is the ultimate space for expression. It's the ultimate space for what is eternally here. Gosh. And it's so... it's an empowering realization to be able to step back from the doing. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to finish this video and I'm going to go into a lot of doing, and a lot of it will fall into unconscious doing. And I will life will unfold irregardless of how much we allow ourselves to become present to it. Life will eternally unfold. And this space of what I have been undoing is that space of, ultimately, is allowing myself to recognize the truth of who I am in comparison to who I believe myself to be, of who I thought I was and who I think I am going to be still. And it's an eternally moving space, an eternally unfolding stage in which my rise of conscious awareness comes up and moves back down into the unfolding of the unconscious doing in awareness. And it is that undulating wave of coming up to breathe and going back down. And I have a lot to be grateful for, not just in terms of the greater aspect of what I am talking about or have been talking about here, but in terms of the journey of me, Blake, and his unfolding path. And that path that I've been walking is beautiful. And depending where I see myself on that, where I allow myself to step into the perspective of that journey, whether I get caught into certain situations, certain feelings, certain emotions, certain patterns, will of course allow me to step out and step into a space of suffering, step into a space of lack, of fear. And the more I allow myself to come back to what is eternally present, and also just give rise and give more space for awareness, but still held within the space of who I understand myself to be. The more I give myself space to see things from a different perspective, but it's still the perspective of who I believe myself to be, just starts to see how the snake forms its path and how we weave our path through the mind of being. I will stop talking shortly. And it's interesting because my journey over the last year, longer, ultimately has led me to this point in which I'm coming in and out of that space of the true self, of what wants to emerge and what wants to arise and what is eternally, the more I come into that space, the more I can allow myself to relax into what is present. And I recognize that the journey of moving from the unconscious into the space of what we might call the awakening is ultimately the journey of stepping into the awareness of the true self. And the true self is that rise in it's the rise in knowing in your being, but ultimately it is just the space of the eternal awareness, recognition of the eternal awareness. And it is in that space of the eternal awareness that you see the truth of your being. And that truth comes from the infinite to the finite, from the unmanifest eternal nature of reality to the manifest nature of the eternal reality. I consider myself, I've said this in the past and it came up to me yesterday or the day before. I said this quite happily. I was like, I am the jack of all trades and the expert of none. And it feels right to be in that space. Because I feel like a lot of what my life has been so far is to many fruitless ends and fruitful beginnings has been a space of exploration into what is, what can be, and what is possible, and ultimately what is true and what is false. And this space of what is, what has been emerging, and this space of who I am understanding myself to be, is giving way to the truth of who I am. And that truth is uninhibited by the past, uninhibited by the idea of the limited self, the limited Blake, who was afraid of getting things wrong, who is still in many ways afraid when that that idea emerges, that unprocessed thought pattern that wants to come up and sees this sense of limitation and feels the associated emotions, the space of fear that is still unseen in me. But the more I'm stepping into that truth as it rises and as it falls away, the more I'm recognizing that what I am is here to be experienced and is here to help shine the light. Let me change that because I actually added help then. I am here to shine the light. And when I say that, I'm not talking about Blake shining the light. Blake, I am here to tell you and to shine this light for you. No, I'm going back to what I'm speaking about is that when Blake steps out of the way, there's an unfolding of consciousness that comes through that has that connection to what is eternal. And it is there that the light shines eternally. And when I get out of the way of myself, I give rise to spirit. I give rise to what is and will be. I'm dancing around my mind here. But I will speak quickly. And so I've had this idea that's been unfolding for a while. Have I had the idea? I don't know. But this idea has been unfolding for a while. And my linear capacity of how starts to unfold a narrative for what wants to emerge. But it's basically the idea of the false self, the true self, and the sacred self. There's nothing new in this concept. I'm not saying that there is something unfolding here that is new at all in the slightest. It just, everything that is here speaks to what is already been said eternally, what is already present eternally. It's just the way that it's unfolding for me, and it is the that space of the false, the true, and the sacred that has helped me to start to navigate a path. And ultimately, the last few months, I've been going through this space in which it's like I'm letting go of the false. What is eternally sacred and true is ever present. So let go of what is sacred and just stick with here, with what is true. And it is this space of coming into the true self. And that sentence can only be understood from within the space of the mind. But coming into the space of the true self and that incubation space of what happens within the volcano. The incubation, perhaps incubation is the wrong word, but the container of coming from what is false, coming from the personality, coming from the false reality of who you project yourself to be, takes time for the true self to really anchor itself. And this isn't my knowledge. Ultimately, a lot of what I've been going through, Muji, what a phenomenal man, am I right? But a lot of the recognitions came through listening to his pointings. And he talks about it, and I'm paraphrasing, but the idea of stabilizing in this space, stabilizing in the awareness of the I am, of the truth of who you are. Paraphrase, paraphrase, paraphrase. But ultimately it is. It's a space of stabilizing in there, because the more you allow, the more you start to taste the space of what is, the more you start to anchor in this state of being. But it takes a long time. I think it will likely take many years, if all my life, to be able to anchor into that space. But it's necessary to do this before I even kind of, on one level, to look at the space of coming out into what I see as the unfolding of the sacred self, which is no different to the true self, but it's almost like, to me, what in the way in which I see it unfolding is that it's like a vow to the true self, because we're never going to truly escape our personality. We're never going to escape the ego, but we can come into a state of a naturalized mind, of bringing the ego into service of us rather than us serving the ego. And the more we do this, the more we can actually start to use the form of who we understand ourselves to truly be, and start to recognize that it is through the form that we can come into service, that we give rise to the sacred, that we allow the manifestation of love eternally present on the earth. And that space of what is unfolding through the form is eternally sacred. And there is nothing that is not sacred in this life. Even the dance and the battle of the unconscious and the ego and what is perceptually evil and dark is just a dance of what is sacred. So I've gone on much longer than I was going to. Actually, no, I don't even know how long I was going to go on for. But I will stop, and I hope to make more rambling, loving videos like this for people to listen to if they feel called to, and for me to just express. Because within this video itself, I've gone through a roller coaster of what I've been connecting in and out of, and what I have allowed and not allowed to come through. And if I can just allow myself to step up and be in that space of service to the consciousness itself, then that is all I can ask to unfold. I love you, and allow what will to unfold. Thank you.